Hello, this is Flora again, talking, talking back, speaking out. And I suppose you've heard that this month is the 20th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina, which flooded New Orleans. You remember it 20 years ago? How people were drowned in their homes, drowned in nursing homes, hospitals, people who weren't able to get out in time. Do you remember how, I don't know, was 1,000 people took refuge in the stadium, which was a bit higher ground? But there in the stadium, there was no fresh food, no water, no medical treatment. And they waited for FEMA to come, the trucks bringing water, food, medical help, search and rescue. It took about 3 or 4 days for the trucks to get there. And here we all were watching on television, those people almost starving, dying there in the stadium. And I, for one, burst into tears when the trucks finally appeared. Probably there were a lot who felt the same way. And I think we realized then how urgently federal help was needed. Now, I'm remembering storms earlier before FEMA was with us, the Federal Emergency Management Agency. One of my earliest memories is the mid-1930s, not an early memory of my personal life, but the news, when there were devastating floods all over the Ohio Valley. And many houses swept away with families lost to the water. And no FEMA then. I'm remembering also, for I was in it, that devastating hurricane, that 1938, September 21, that blew up unexpectedly from the Caribbean into the northeastern states, killing over 600 people. Trees uprooted, houses swept away. There was even a school bus swept out to sea. This was all decades before FEMA. Back in those days, the state did what it could to help you, but the states were sometimes overwhelmed. They could not give all the help for disaster that they wanted. And so it was all up to the person, him or herself, and their family. Well, that medical, fresh food and water, incentive to rebuild, insurance help that we call FEMA, may no longer be ours in disasters in the future. Just in July, that killer flood in the Guadalupe River in Texas, FEMA came very late. And Homeland Security, Christy Noem, said, "What you saw from our response in Texas," that is speaking for FEMA, "is going to be a lot of how President Trump envisions what FEMA would look like in the future." There have been huge financial cuts. There have been many people fired, laid off, particularly the experienced administrators. The reason FEMA help was late coming to the Guadalupe River was that it all has to be approved now by the White House, any aid sent, instead of the way it used to be, the experienced, trained administrators knowing what is needed. And the governors have to be the one to request federal aid. And sometimes they pile up now in the White House. There's quite a deadlock going on. This past week, and this caps everything, the federal government has set dozens of FEMA employees assigned to ICE, the Immigration Enforcement, to assist in the mass deportments. It's not enough already to have fired and laid off so many of the administrators. Now they're pulling in the workers to work for ICE. What sense does that make as we're approaching the hurricane season? We're already in the fire season, devastating fires already. And in fact, Trump has said quite openly that he plans, after this hurricane season coming up, to phase out FEMA altogether. And this when storms will be more frequent and far worse due to climate change. But of course, we know he doesn't believe in climate change. He says it is a hoax, though about almost 99% scientists disagree with this fool. For example, I've seen it in my own lifetime. Not only the polar caps melting at an astonishing rate and the sea levels rising, but in the state in which I grew up, never used to have tornadoes. I don't remember one in my childhood or my teenage years. Now they have dozens every summer and fall. The last time I visited there, we were driving out the road and we had to dodge 3 tornadoes in one area. That changed in just 90 years. And there are massive cuts also in the weather bureaus. So forecasting and warnings are also endangered. Are we headed back to the disaster scenes of my youth in the 1930s when the states were overwhelmed and it was up to you and me to search and rescue? Up to you and me to find fire, food, water, medicine. Up to you and me to try to rebuild on our own after everything we own is destroyed and members of our family missing. I remember those days. I saw them. Is this why our majority of this nation voted in this administration? I'm not hearing much about this on the media. I see occasional newspaper articles. Here, for example, on May 16, 5 people died in the deadliest tornado in Missouri since 1959. The tornado cut a swath 23 miles long through the heart of St. Louis, causing an estimated $1.6 billion in damage. The mayor told me, this journalist writes, $300 million price tag just for cleanup. The governor made his first request to FEMA on May 19 for emergency management that would have unlocked up to $5 million for public safety, public health, and debris removal. He made another request on May 23 for a major disaster declaration. And despite the extraordinary damage, the administration sat on both requests until June 9, when it denied the emergency management request, but finally, after 3 weeks, approved the major disaster declaration. That's the situation as it is now. And if Trump has his way, There won't even be anyone coming after 3 weeks. We get an occasional article about it. I haven't heard much uproar otherwise. The whole Epstein files is such a more exciting thing to think about. But our next huge fire, flood, tornado, hurricane will be faced with a shocking reality that can directly affect you and me. What to do? Learn the facts. Keep alert. Speak out loud. Pass it on. Thank you for being with me this evening. See you later.